Okay, so recording has been started. Let me share the so today I'll be discussing the other components of the traditional advanced control strategies, which are basically a high-level application of PID controller. In the last class, I have discussed the time delay compensator or Smith predictor controller. Today, I will discuss the cascade control strategies, split range control, selective control, override control, valve position control, and also variable structure control. So these are basically high-level applications of PID controller, which work based on the feedback control strategy. But we can also have feed-forward control strategies and the ratio control strategies. So today we'll discuss the cascade control strategies. What do we mean by the cascade control strategies? Let us take the example of a furnace control. So here in this furnace, cold oil is getting heated in a furnace which is fired by the fuel gas. This is a standard situation in any petroleum oil refinery where the crude oil is normally getting heated or vaporized using a furnace. Now, the conventional control strategies is you measure the hot oil temperature, which is coming out from the furnace, and then you have a controller which manipulates the firing rate, that means the fuel gas flow rate. Now, in this conventional control strategy, the major problem normally faced is that the flow rate of fuel gas. This fuel gas is normally coming from a fuel gas header. This fuel gas header is connected to the downstream plants of the, say in this case, let's say in a refinery. So from many other process units, fuel gas is coming over here and it's stored in the fuel header. And from that fuel header, the fuel gas is taken and for firing the furnace. Now this fuel header pressure is continuously fluctuating because the fuel gas is coming from different parts of the units of the refinery, and depending on the flows over there, the fuel gas header pressure normally fluctuates. Now if the fuel gas header pressure fluctuates, then what will happen is, for the same opening of the control valve, the delta P across the control valve will change, which means the flow through the control valve will change for the same opening of the control valve. See, in this control, this TC, that means this temperature controller sends a signal which basically dictates that percentage of opening of control valve should be there. So let's say it gives a signal which corresponds to a 40% opening of the control valve. But if the fuel gas header pressure changes, then the delta P across this control valve will change. So the flow rate of the fuel gas will change, which means it will change the firing rate. So if the header pressure increases, the flow rate will increase for the same control valve opening and the firing will increase. So this is basically a disturbance caused in the input itself, in the manipulating variable itself. Okay. So the question comes, how to take care of it? So here basically hot oil temperature is controlled by the fuel gas flow rate. Fuel gas, as I told earlier, the fuel gas obtained from other process units, and so pressure of the fuel gas fluctuates, and the flow rate of fuel gas will be different for the same valve opening. As the pressure of the fuel gas header fluctuates, the flow rate of the fuel gas will be different for the same valve opening. So how to take care of this? So we can take care of this by setting that irrespective of the fuel gas header pressure fluctuations, the flow rate of the fuel gas should remain constant for a specific controller output. For a specific controller output TC, the flow rate of the fuel gas should remain constant irrespective of the fuel gas header pressure fluctuation. That we can implement if we put a pressure controller over here. This pressure controller basically measures the pressure. So this pressure, this line pressure, which is basically related to the flow rate of the fuel gas. So this normally when we measure the flow rate of a gas, normally we measure the pressure only, that will give us the flow rate, which is related to the flow rate. So we measure the pressure over here, and we have a pressure controller. Based on the pressure over here, we open or close the control valve. And this pressure will fluctuate as the header pressure will fluctuate. This pressure will fluctuate as the header pressure fluctuates. So the controller will see that pressure and immediately take a corrective actions by changing the opening of the control valve. Okay, so here you can see we have got one output and one manipulated variables, but you are using two controllers over here. You are using two controllers over here. One controller is the master controller, so the TC is the master controller, and this PC is the slave controller, because we have got two control loops over here. One is this control loop, PT, PC, and the control valve over here. This is one control loop. So this is output controller and the manipulated variable. The second control loop is that this is output TT, TC, and the manipulated variable over here is the set point of the PC. So this is the master controller or master loop, and this is the secondary controller or slave controller or slave loop. So in a cascade control strategy, you will have a master loop and a slave loop. So in this strategy, basically it will now maintain the fuel gas pressure or flow rate regardless of the header pressure and the valve characteristics. Here we have got two feedback controllers, TC and PC, but we have only one single control valve or single final control element. So output signal of the master controller is the set point of the slave controller, and two feedback controllers are basically nested as the master and slave configurations. So this one is basically called the primary loop, and this one is called the secondary loop. So there are number of terminologies. Sometimes people tell this master and slave. Sometimes it is told primary and secondary. Sometimes it is called outer and inner loop. So these are basically the cascade control strategies. We'll take another example. In this case, this is basically a, let's say, an exothermic reaction is taking place in a reactor, which is jacketed. So the heat is basically taken out from in this jacket using the coolant. Let's say cooling water is used as the coolant over here. So in this case, we are maintaining the reactor temperature TC by maintaining the jacket temperature over here. So when we are doing this, we could have easily controlled the reactor temperature by simply manipulating the control valve in the cooling water line, in the cooling water line. That means the TC output can go directly this control valve over here to control this reactor. But if we do that, then the problem is the temperature of the cooling water, if it changes, then this jacket temperature will change. That will basically change the amount of heat removal or the reactor temperature. So this is basically the cooling water temperature. Cooling water temperature is basically disturbance which is causing the changes in the manipulated variable. So it's a disturbance in the manipulated variable. So to take care of the disturbance in the manipulated variable, we ensure that the jacket temperature remains same. The jacket temperature or the cooling water inside the jacket, temperature of the cooling water inside the jacket remains same, in spite of the changes in the cooling water inlet temperature. So to ensure that, we have to configure this control as a cascade control configuration. So we have a slave loop over here which basically maintains the jacket temperature. So we measure the jacket temperature. We have a temperature controller which manipulates the cooling water control valve. And the master controller, which is the reactor temperature controller, which measures the reactor, takes the input as a reactor temperature measurement, and the output is the set point of the slave controller. That means the jacket temperature controller. Okay, so this is basically a cascade control configuration strategy. So in this case, jacket temperature can be controlled by adjusting the cooling water flow rate. What happens? Now, if the cooling water inlet temperature changes, the jacket temperature will change with the same flow rate. That's what I discussed earlier. And for rise in reactor temperature, hot cooling water will be replaced by the cold cooling water. So for this case, if you look at this configuration, here basically the cooling water is recirculated. This cooling water is recirculated continuously. So at some steady state point, at some steady state operations, the cooling water is recirculated continuously till there is a changes in the reactor temperature. If there is an increase in the reactor temperature, let's say if there is an increase in the reactor temperature, then the jacket temperature will also increase. The jacket temperature will also increase. If the jacket temperature increases, then if the reactor temperature increases, then this reactor controller will give a new set point to the jacket temperature controller. Now, which basically this new set point will look at the jacket temperature, which will increase. The jacket temperature will increase because the reactor temperature has increased. So to maintain the jacket temperature, it will increase the cooling water flow rate. Now, if it is increase the cooling water flow rate, then in this cooling water circulation loop, you have a surge tank over here, whose level is controlled by a level controller. So if I increase the cooling water makeup over here, that means we are giving additional cooling water over here, that will increase the level over here. So since the level will increase, so this level controller will discard some cooling water from here, which in essence, the cold cooling water will replace the hot cooling water which is circulating over here is using these configurations. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. So this is another example of the cascade control of an exothermic chemical reactor. Now let us see the theory of this cascade control. So if I take that furnace control, then we can draw a block diagram for this. Here, let's say this hot oil temperature is the Y, and the cold oil temperature, let's say is a D1, is a disturbance to the process. The fuel gas flow rate, let's say this is U. Header pressure, the disturbance which is let's say D2, and the valve opening is let's say U1. So in this case, you can see over here, this U, this fuel gas flow rate is a function of the valve opening U1 and D2. U1 and D2. So I can write that U1 is equal to Vs plus D2s. So U1 into Vs plus D2s is equal to U. We can write that based on this. Also, if you look at the primary process, that means in the furnace we can say hot oil is Y. So we can say Y is equal to, if PS is the furnace transfer function, then Y is equal to PS into U plus D. So Y is equal to PS into U plus D1. So we write the Y is equal to PS into U plus D1, and U is U1 Vs plus D2. So we draw the block diagram over here, and then this U, this the controller, so U and U1 is basically control U and U1. This is the U1 control valve opening. So this is the slave loop, so that we are controlling to get a USP, my desired value of the fuel gas flow rate. So this is the slave control loop over here, and the master control for the slave controller. The slave controller set point will be given by the master controller output. So the master controller output is basically slave controller set point over here, and then this is basically the master controller, which takes the input of the Y or the hot oil temperature. And here basically the D1 is the disturbance, which is the disturbance of the cold oil temperature. So this is basically the block diagram. This is basically the block diagram for the cascade control strategy, where you have got two control loops. The outer one is the primary control loop or master control loop, and the inner one is the secondary control loop or the slave control loop. So once we have the block diagram, now we can write the equation, closed loop equation for the cascade control system. So the feedback equation for the cascade control system will be like this. We have US is equal to, from here we can write US is equal to C2 into Vs by 1 plus C2 Vs USP S plus 1 by 1 plus C2 Vs D2S. So this for the slave loop, we can write the equations. So for the slave loop, we can write the equation. For the master loops, we can write YS is equal to this slave loop equation, that means C2 Vs PS 1 plus C2S Vs USPS plus PS 1 plus C2S Vs D2S plus D1S. This we can write easily because YS is equal to US into PS plus DS, D1S. And US is given by this term. So we will replace the US by this term and we'll get these equations. Now this USPS is nothing but C1S into YSP minus YS. C1S into YSP minus YS. So we replace this USPS by C1S into YSP minus YS. So we replace this term, and then after doing algebraic manipulations, we get the final feedback equations, which is C1 C2 Vs PS by HS into YSPS plus PS HS D2S and 1 plus C2S VS HS into D1S, where HS is given by this expression 1 plus C2S VS plus C1 C2 VS PS. Okay, so this will get the feedback equations for the cascade control strategies. So once we have the feedback equations for the cascade control strategy, let us try to implement in a MATLAB and see how the cascade control strategy takes care of the disturbances, specifically the disturbances D2, which is the disturbances in the manipulated variable. Because the cascade control strategy is designed to take care of these disturbances in the D2. So before going to the MATLAB implementation, let's see what are the advantages and disadvantages, or how do we implement the cascade control strategies. The advantages is that it rejects the disturbances in the slave loop before it affects the main process variables. Secondly, it linearizes the slave process, because since we are using a slave loop and any feedback loop is basically linearize the nonlinear process, then it improves also the dynamics of the slave process. Implementation is the slave process is at least 3 times as faster as the master loop in terms of response time. This is very, very important when we can implement the cascade control strategies. We can implement the cascade control strategies only where the slave process is at least 3 times faster than the master process. For example, if I go back here, if I go back to this, let's say if the jacket here, basically reactor volume, let's say is the V1. Let's say reactor volume is V1. So the time constant in the reactor is dependent on this V1, right? Now the jacket volume, let's say, is V2, which is comparable to V1. So V2 is nearly equals to V1 or slightly less than V1. In that case, we cannot implement a cascade controller over here. In that case, we cannot implement a cascade controller over here because the response time in the jacket, so the jacket temperature response time and the reactor response time are more or less same. So if I just consider only the jacket cooling water jacket as a process, then the response time for this cooling water jacket is equivalent to the response time of the reactor. If in that case, this cascade control will not work, because in the cascade control, the master controller will give a change, will direct the slave controller. Now, if the slave controller is not working fast, then the master controller will not work. Right? The master controller will not work. So the slave controller has to be 3 times faster than the master controller, or the slave control loop has to be 3 times faster than the master control loop. Then only the cascade control strategy will work. Okay, so this is a very important thing when we are basically deciding to implement the cascade control strategy. We should first find out what is the speed of the slave process with respect to the master process. Secondly, the advantage over here is the slave loop may not need to be controlled exactly at the set point. So tight control of the slave loop is not required. In fact, in many cases, you will find only the proportional controller is used in the slave loop. So if I use only proportional controller, then the speed of response will be pretty fast of the control loop with the offset in the slave control loop, but that offset will not hamper the master control loop. Normally, slave loop should be tuned first while the master in manual, and then we tune the master while the slave loop is in automatic mode. If the slave loop is retuned for some reason, obviously the master loop has to be retuned. Otherwise, synchronization will not be there. And this is obvious, the master can be transferred to auto after the slave becomes auto. So in actual practice, normally what we do is if we first we tune the slave loop, we put all the control loops in manual, both master controller as well as the slave controller in the manual mode. We can tune the slave controller first. Normally we use a proportional controller and tune the slave controller. Then we put it auto. Then we tune the cascade primary controller or master controller, and then we put the master controller in the auto mode. So now let's see how do we implement the, let's say, furnace control using MATLAB implementations. So let us take these are the basically the transfer function of the process. Ys is equal to 10 by s plus 1, s plus 2, s plus 3 us. And US is given by this one. So here US is the fuel gas flow rate, which is the function to the fuel gas control valve opening, fuel gas control valve opening, and the header pressures. So 2.2 by 2s plus 1 and 3 by s plus 2, which are basically the transfer functions related to the control valve opening and the header pressure. Okay. So the first step will be obviously we have to define the process in the MATLAB. So we define the process in the MATLAB. And the second, since we will be comparing the pure feedback control strategy with the cascade control strategy. So first we design the pure feedback control strategy. So in case of pure feedback control strategies, we basically tune the feedback controller with a, let's say, bandwidth of 0.2 radian per second and the phase margin of 60 degrees. So based on this criteria, we tune the PI controller. We use a MATLAB command which is PID tune. Here the process is P and V. Here P is this one and V is this one. So P into V. We are using PI controller and the bandwidth is 0.2 and by default phase margin 60 degree phase margin is taken. So it is we got a control. We have designed the controller C. Then we design the closed loop system SYS1, which is P into V into C. So this is the single loop controller or the conventional feedback controller. Now let us design the cascade control strategy. In the cascade control strategy, we will have a slave controller and the master controller. So when we are designing the cascade control strategy, we will not redesign the master controller. This will be used as the master controller in the cascade control strategy. But we'll design the slave controller. So the slave controller will be much faster than the master controller. So we put the target bandwidth as 2 radian per second. So 10 times faster than the, oh, what happens? Hello. Hello. One of you please respond.
Sir, hello.
Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir. We are able to see.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So because there are some interruptions in the network. Okay, let me continue. So we have designed the feedback controllers. The next we will design the slave controller in the master slave configuration of the cascade controller. So the slave controller will basically design which is 10 times faster than the master controller. So we have taken a target bandwidth as 2 radian per second, phase margin remaining same. And then we are basically designing the slave controller. In the slave controller, the process is V. So this is the process. So based on that, we design the slave controller. Then we get the closed loop slave closed loop system. And then we design the cascade controller. Here basically this controller is same. The same controller we are basically using as a master controller. We are not retuning that master controller over here based on this. And then basically we first go for a set points reference tracking or set point tracking. Then also we design for the disturbance rejection. So we go for a disturbance rejection. These are basically the disturbance rejection equations. For the feedback control equations, we go for a disturbance rejection, and for the cascade control also, we go for a disturbance rejections. And then we plot it. So once we do that, for the set point tracking, we can see this one is for the simple feedback control. This one is for simple feedback control, and this one when you are implementing the cascade control strategy. You can see over here when you are implementing the cascade control strategy, we are implementing the cascade control strategy. The speed of response has become slower. The speed of response, I will not say speed of response, I will say the system has become damped now. You have got overshoot over here, but now the system has become damped, so the output reaches the set point smoothly over here. This was for the same controller, same master controller configuration. So in both the cases over here, you can see the master controller configurations are same. In both the cases, master controller configurations are remaining same. Only thing in this case, we have a slave controller over here, which basically means when I'm implementing a cascade control strategy, I have the opportunity of making the master controller more aggressive. Now I have the opportunity to make the master controller more aggressive, which means, see, we have used the phase margin at 60 degree. So we can reduce the phase margin to 45 degree or 30 degrees. So because normally we know phase margin is related to the damping. As we increase the phase margin, the damping will increase. So we can decrease the damping. Here it is damped basically. So in this case, we can decrease the damping over here by decrease the phase margin. Okay. So that is an advantage. We can make the master controller more aggressive when you are putting the cascade control strategy. Let us see what happens to the disturbance rejection. Now, in case of a disturbance rejection, this disturbance is the disturbance of the fuel gas header pressures. That means the disturbance in the input. Now you can see there are a lot of difference or a lot of changes in the disturbance rejection. In case of a simple feedback control loop strategy, you can see the output response changes to there 40% overshoot in the output response. 40% overshoot in the output response for the disturbances in the fuel gas header pressure. Whereas if I put a cascade control strategy, the overshoot reduces to very small. This is 140. This is 1.4. So 140%. Here basically you will get 30% or slightly more than 30%, 34, 35%. So this is a lot of changes in the output response when you are using the cascade control strategy. So the output response there is hardly any changes in the output response if we are using a cascade control strategy for disturbance in the fuel gas header pressures. So that is a major advantage when you are using the cascade control strategy. Okay. But we have to keep in our mind that when we can use the cascade control strategy when the slave loop or the slave process is much faster than the master process, at least 3 times faster than the master process. Next, we'll go to the next strategy, which is basically called the split range control strategy. Now, in the split range control strategy, let us take one example over here. This is basically a control of a batch reactor. Let's say in this batch reactor, we are controlling a process, let's say A to B, B to C, let's say a reaction, which is A to B, B to C. So in that reaction, we have to maximize the production of B. So we have to ensure the max production of the desired, because B is the desired product and C is the undesired product. So we have to ensure the maximum production of B, and also we have to suppress the production of the undesired product, which is C over here. If my reaction is A to B, B to C, then B is the desired product and C is the undesired product. So we have to ensure the maximum production of B and suppress the production of C. Now, to do that by design, we know that the reactor temperature has to be manipulated, or reactor temperature should vary in such a fashion so that these two objectives can be achieved. So let's say that the reactor temperature should rise at 5 degrees centigrade per minute up to certain time and decrease at the same rate. So if you have it's a batch process, so we have a batch time. So in the middle, up to the middle of the batch time, the reactor temperature will increase at a rate of 5 degrees centigrade per minute, and then it will decrease at the same rate at 5 degrees centigrade per minute till the end of the batch. So in this situation, how to design a control strategy for this? What should be our control strategy for this? Here you can see we have got only one controller output or only one control objective, which is the controller maintaining the reactor temperature to a desired temperature profile. So to do this, what we can do is we can use a feedback control strategy. So we measure the temperature, we have put a temperature controller, but the output of the temperature controller we can send to the two control valves. One is we have got a hot water supply as well as the cold water supply. We require both hot water supply and cold water supply because we have to maintain the reactor temperature, because our desired reactor temperature profile is first increasing and then decreasing. So the reactor temperature profile is in this fashion. So to maintain this same reactor temperature profile, we have to have a hot water supply as well as the cold water supply, because using only one hot water supply or a cold water supply, it will not help. But since we have got two manipulated variables, hot water supply and cold water supply, then the controller output will go to both these two manipulated variables. Now the question is how this control valves will operate based on the same control signal. Okay. So this strategy is basically called the split range control. So that means the controller output is going to the multiple manipulated variables. Controller output is goes to the multiple manipulated variables. And in what way this or this splitting of this controller signal will be made is called the split range control strategy. So split range control strategy, you can say that split range control loop is used where there are several manipulated variables but a single output variable. The coordination among different manipulated variables is carried out by using the split range control. The split range control loop can be implemented in 3 different ways. One is the split range control, second one is the sequence control, and third one is the opposite action control. So what do we mean by the split range control, sequence control, and opposite action control? If we look at the valves over here, so you have got 2 valves over here, valve A and valve B. So if we look at the split range controls over here, so these valves are the signal to the valve, the valves are tuned such a way that for the control signal, I have put it the pressure increase basically is nothing but the increase of the controller output. So initially the valve is fully open. As the controller output increases, the valve A closes. Initially the valve A is fully open and valve B is fully closed. As the controller output increases, the valve A opening decreases, and at the midpoint or the 50% of the controller output, the valve A fully closes and the valve B open. So this is basically called the split range. This is basically called the split range. In the sequence operations, initially both the valves are closed. Initially, as the controller output increases, the valve A opens. At 50% of output, the valve A fully open, and valve B started opening again after 50% opening. And at 100% opening, both the valves are fully open. So this is basically called the sequence operation valve or sequence valve operations. And the opposite action is the valve actions are acting in opposite directions. So when the controller output is 0, then one of the valve is fully open, another valve is fully closed, and as the controller output increases, one of the fully open valve is closing and the fully closed valve is opening. So at the 100% output, the valve A become fully open and valve B become fully closed. So this is basically the opposite actions controller valves operations. So these are basically the split range control is basically depends on the how the valve operation or the manipulated variables will act. Well, manipulated variables will act or operate based on the controller output signal. So if we continue with this control of batch operations, so here we can see we have got 2 valves over here. This control valve is fully closed and this one is fully open. Fully closed control valve basically means when there is no output, when there is no signal, the control valve is fully closed. And when fully open means when there is no signal, the control valve is fully open. Okay, this is basically FC and FO is also called the fail close and fail open control valve. Fail close and fail open basically means when the instrument when the power fails in the control valve, when the power fails, if it is a pneumatic control valve, the power of the control valve is the pressure, pneumatic pressure. So if there is a problem of pneumatic pressure, if there is no pneumatic pressure in the control valve, the valve will be fully closed. And when there is no pressure in the control valve here, for this case, the valve will be fully open. So this is a fail close and fail open control valve. Now we are using the temperature controller over here, and this temperature controller signal goes over here to this valve as well as to this valve. Now, if we look at this operation now, say initially the reactor is at room temperature, let's say. Reactor is at room temperature, and we have taken the maximum temperature, which go to the 80 degrees centigrade, and then it goes back to the room temperature again. So let's say my room temperature is 25 degrees centigrade, so it will go to the 80 degrees centigrade, and then it comes back to the 25 degrees centigrade. So initially, when I'm putting my temperature controller in automatic mode, the controller output will be very high. The controller output will be very high because the error will be here, because this temperature controller set point is progressed like this. So what will happen is the controller output sent to both control valves. So as the temperature increases, so what will happen is initially this hot water control valve will increase because the controller output will be high. So it will be in the range of 12 milliamps to 20 milliamps. So the hot water control valve will increase and the hot water will come into the system and the reactor temperature will rise. Yes, reactor temperature will rise. And since we have a profile like this, that means the set point will be varying like this. So till it goes to the highest temperature, this will goes on increasing, as well as the controller output also will increase. And as temperature increases, but as temperature increases, at least goes to say 50 degrees centigrade, 60 degrees centigrade, and 70 degrees centigrade, the controller output now will decrease. Now, if the controller output decreases, then the cold water supply will increase because the cold water supply now will increase. Okay. So this valve will start opening. This valve will start opening. And the hot water, so the hot water supply will decrease. Here basically the cold side CV work between 4 to 12 milliamps and the hot side CV work between 12 to 20 milliamps. Okay. So this way basically the split range controller will work. I hope it is clear to you. I'll take another case over here for the speed range control. Another case is, so if I am controlling the overhead drum in a distillation column. In the overhead drum in a distillation column or a separator. So in this case, in a normal operation, the gas will goes to the compressor, the gas will goes to the compressor, and then it goes to the some places or to the header. Let's say it's a fuel gas, and this fuel gas is then compressed and then it goes to the header, fuel gas header. But if there is any offset in the plant and there is an increase in the fuel gas, then this fuel gas pressure will increase in the drum. And if the fuel gas pressure increases, then we have to vent out the fuel gas to maintain the pressure. Now to vent out the fuel gas, then we have to put this gas to the flare where basically the gas will be burned. So in that case, we can use a split range control strategy, and this is basically a sequence operation, sequence valve operation strategy. So 0 to 50% basically for the 0 to 50%. So controller output for 0 to 100% is basically 0 to 50%. So for 0 to 50%, it will basically work like this. So here this is say controller output. The controller output, let's say it is tuned like this. Say 0 to 80% or 80%, 0 to 80% is basically for these operations, and for when controller output from goes above 80%, so 80 to 100% for these operations. So what happens is when the controller output goes to 90%, then both the valves, this valve will be fully open as well as this valve will start opening also, will be 50% opening. Okay, so this is basically a split range control where the sequence operation is valve sequence operation is taking place. This one is basically a control of a pH neutralization reactor where we have got pH controller. We have got a pH controller, and this pH controller giving signal. This pH controller is giving signal to two control valves. One is the acid line, another is the base line. So we have got the acid flow rate and the caustic flow rate, and we have got two control valves in the acid line and the base line. Now you can see over here the pH increases as caustic flow increases, and pH decreases as acid flow decreases. So these two valves are basically these two lines are basically, or the process is basically acting in opposite directions. So the acid flow and the caustic flow effect on the process is in opposite directions. So if we put a control valve over here, we have put a control valve which is basically year to open, and this is year to close. So year to open and year to close basically means this is a fail close valve and this is a fail open valve. And depending on the controller output signal, the control valve will operate. And from here itself, you can see these two control valves are acting in the opposite direction. So at some certain values of the pH, at some certain values, if this one is in a steady state operations, then these two control valves, maybe this one is the 60% open, this can be a 40% open. And as the pH increase, if the pH increases because of the incoming water to be treated, so if the pH decreases, and if I have to maintain the pH at 7, and if the pH decreases, then we have to increase the base flow rate. We have to increase the base flow rate. So this one will increase, the controller output will increase, and this one will increase, and this one will, control valve will decrease. Okay. So this is basically the control of pH neutralization reactors where opposite action valve operations in place. So this is in essence is the split range control strategy. So in a split range control strategy, you have got one control variable or one control objective and multiple manipulated variable. Another important control strategy is the auxiliary control. In the auxiliary control, if you look at this control strategy of a control of tubular reactor, now in the tubular reactor, if we are controlling a temperature of the tubular reactor, normally what happens if there is an exothermic reaction is taking place in this tubular reactor, there will be a situation of hotspots forming in some places in that reactor, in some places in the reactor. And these hotspots are very difficult to locate because this is varying. So this, if you have to control the hotspot temperature, then we have to find out this location of the hotspot. And this location of the hotspots normally travels through this reactor. Which means it's very, very difficult to pinpoint that where is the hotspots locations. So to find out the hotspots locations, we can have multiple temperature measurements. We can have multiple temperature measurements. OK. And using these multiple temperature sensors, then we'll have an auctioneering system, which nothing but a selector switch. Auctioneering system, which is nothing but a selector switch. So it will select one measurement. You will select one measurement from the multiple measurement points. So it will take one measurement point from the multiple measurement point. And since we have got only one manipulated variable, so that one measurement will use as an input to the controller over here. Now this selection of the appropriate output from the manufacturer measurements, like for this case, using a selector switch. So the selector switch can be a low selector switch, can be a high selector switch, or can be a medium selector switch. So in this case, like in this example, obviously we'll take the high selector switch, which will basically gives me the highest temperature, and based on this high selector switch, that will get the hotspot temperature, and accordingly we control the reactor temperature. So this is basically called the auctioneering control or selector control based on the selector switch. So in auctioneering control, we'll have multiple measurements, but one manipulated variable. And this from this multiple, and since as per degrees of freedom, we have to use only one measurement. So from that multiple measurement, we can select one measurement using a selector switch. That selector switch can be a low selector switch, or a high selector switch, or a median selector switch. OK. Then we'll go to the, OK, I'll stop here because we do not have, it's already 11 o'clock. So I'll stop here. So the rest of the control strategy I will discuss in the next class. OK. So do you have any questions on this? So, OK, then if you do not have any questions, so I am ending this meeting.